Hi, my name is Woody Bliss. I'm First Selectman here in Weston, Connecticut. God's country. I guess it's just helping out in the community. I've lived in basically 3 terrific communities, all similar to Weston, and all dependent on a high number of volunteers to make it a great place. Whether it's Girl Scouts or Little League or Boy Scouts, whatever, they're run by volunteers. So I've always been into volunteering. I've lived here for almost 35 years. Next month will be 35 years. Yeah, we're out here today flipping burgers and hot dogs for our seniors. This is our annual luncheon that we have for the senior center in the late spring, early summer. Well, I got to tell you, Weston's the best town in the world. So not just Connecticut, not just the U.S., but the world. But yeah, I think people move here for 2 things, really. One is the quality of our schools. We have just outstanding public schools. And then secondly, just the quality of life. We have 2-acre zoning back in the 50s. The Planning and Zoning Commission passed laws that required 2 acres to build a house. And that has stood us in great stead. We don't have city water, we don't have sewers. We're all on wells and septic fields. So you have to have the 2 acres for that. Let's start with Little League. We have 3 kids. The oldest is a boy. He played Little League. I was a baseball player 100 years ago. And anyway, he played Little League and did well. The girls wanted to play. Our Little League would not let girls play. So one of the other guys, Al Hormel, and I wrote a letter to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and said, why can't girls play Little League? And we got a letter back, well, it's our policy. So we called them up. We finally sent them a letter and said, look, if we don't allow girls to play, we're going to quit Little League, and we're going to form our own, and we're going to allow girls to play. So eventually they called back, and they said, oh, well, yeah, there's probably no reason girls can't play. So our 2 girls played. Our daughter was the first girl to make the all-star team, kind of thing, and she had some funny incidents. Like she played mostly shortstop, but she played infield, and but she pitched once in a while. She struck out the star hitter on another team, and he went and cried and went and locked himself in a car. So after that, I knew it was important that girls and boys played together, so boys could learn from playing with girls. I was active on the Board of Finance here, and then more recently I was on the panel of moderators, we have a town meeting form of government. And so I did that for about 10 years. I was chairman of that for about 6 of the 10 years. And then 10 years ago I got elected to the Board of Selectmen. And then 8 years ago I got elected First Selectman. But I've actively pursued the acquisition of open space, because I believe every acre of open space that you preserve makes every other acre in town worth more. And so we've done about 1,500 acres of preservation in town. Well, I think it assures the future of the town in terms of a nice bucolic kind of place. Open space is just space that isn't used for any purpose. It's just sitting there for recreational purposes, so you can hike on it, you can just enjoy it, you can watch the birds, the trees, the whatever. But in the 8 years I've been First Selectman, we've preserved about 1,500 acres of open space, including I headed a big project statewide which preserved over 18,000 acres of land that was going to be sold and turned into developments. And so we ultimately got the state and an outfit called the Nature Conservancy, which is a national organization, top-notch organization. We raised about $90 million and bought all this. We either bought the land outright or we bought conservation rights, which means you can't develop it. And so that's scattered all over mostly this end of the state, but all over the state, really. You know, it's interesting. People say, what are you going to change in Weston? I say, not much. I want to preserve it and keep it the way it is. I mean, we have almost no business. 1.4% of our grand list is commercial, which is just like unheard of. Westport has 28%, just south of us, another lovely town. But people move here because that's the way the town is. If they want more development, they can move to some other towns. If they want lots of development, move to New York City or something. So my hope is that we keep it the way it is, that we preserve it, that we're careful of our environment, because I mentioned before we have wells and we have sewers, and we have to make sure that the sewers don't contaminate our wells, kind of thing, or our aquifers. We also have to be conscious of our rivers. I'm working on a thing right now which would forbid the use of pesticides and fertilizers within 10 feet of a watercourse. And the problem is when you fertilize, folks just throw it on, and some of it washes off into your water supply, and eventually, I mean, that's what causes the algae blooms and things like that. So we're working on that. I think we can get that done. I think Weston is a best kept secret.
I would say Devil's Den, open space.
Yeah, but I mean, people don't.
beauty it is.
I think if people realize what an incredible town this was, we'd have, instead of 10,000 people, we'd have 100,000 or a million people moving here. We have a thing called Devil's Den, which is a preserve up in the north end of town. They've got wonderful trails, and you just wander through there. We have several of them. We have a thing called Trout Brook Valley, again, where you can climb up this, I call it a mountain. It's a huge hill. It's nothing. It's not a mountain by Colorado standards, but you can look out over the reservoir and the lakes and see the landscape. So it's really, really relaxing, and you can really recharge in those kinds of things.